Hey guys, I'm from Riverdale, Season 1, Episode 3, Chapter 3, Body Double, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. I've really been enjoying the show so far, and I'm glad to see that a lot of people are picking it up and watching it because it's been really well done so far between its mystery aspect, but also its high school aspect. I think those two things have gone very well together. And while I did think that this was another really good episode, I can't help but lie, this episode was kind of filler. I definitely will say that. There wasn't a ton going on. There was one, it definitely did dealt with, I think, a very important subject, for high schoolers that I've seen a million times, but still well done in this episode, and definitely did reiterate on what the most important friendship of the show is and what the most important relationship of the show really is. But in general, besides one storyline, there really wasn't much else going on, I have to say. But let's just get into this episode because I do definitely want to get into it. So we start off right where the previous episode left off, with Cheryl being escorted by Sheriff Keller and Principal Weatherby, and Jughead's narration explains that in the wake of Cheryl's arrest, nothing in Riverdale makes sense anymore. Cheryl takes a seat in Weatherby's office, and crowds of people are watching outside the window, and she explains that while she wasn't the one who killed Jason, who she did in fact love profusely, I've said before, she loves him in kind of like a creepy way, not just a brother-sister way, in like an obsession sort of way. She's guilty of lying about the details surrounding his death. She hasn't really, admitted what's really going on. And she says that the last time she saw her brother was July 4th, when they had concocted in an elaborate plan, and Jason wanted to permanently leave Riverdale, and the pair staged the Boeing accident so their parents wouldn't go after him. So basically, yeah, they were planning on faking his death. At least that's what I got from this, that they were planning on faking his death so that way their parents would stay away and wouldn't try to get him to leave because he genuinely did want to leave, so they tried to fake his death, but obviously that didn't seem to work out. I mean, he did in fact die. So they safely made it to the other side of the river, and Jason promised to contact her when he was out of their parents' reach. So somewhere in the middle of that, Jason was shot, and then he was found dead. We don't really know what happened from there, but I think that story definitely did give us some more interesting things for the episode. But the episode does not focus a ton on the case, I will definitely say that. Keller questions her story, believing it's just a cover-up for her guilt in the murder, and Cheryl asserts that she didn't kill Jason and begins to describe the gunshot that the pair heard on July 4th, and Keller asks why she didn't come forward with that information. Cheryl said it's because she was too upset about Jason's murder. She just couldn't bear to really just come to terms. It was hard for her to come to terms with it. She really couldn't admit what actually happened, and suddenly, Cheryl's parents burst in, they escort her away, and we can immediately see why Jason was so upset, with their parents, because their parents are they're very meddling, they're very demanding, and just in general, they're very, very, they're very uptight. I mean, if you thought that Betty's parents were uptight, that's really nothing compared to Cheryl's parents. Hell, there's like a one-on-one scene with those two later. We'll get into that, but I did think this was a good way to start the episode. I just wish the rest of the episode was as into the case as this part of the episode was. Superhouse, Alice shows Betty the cover of the newest issue of the Riverdale Register, which says that Cheryl is guilty, and Betty asks her mom to stop sensationalizing the murder because, yeah, she is. I mean, she's treating this like it's it's a news report, and like it's something that's just like a celebrity sort of situation. It's not that, and Alice asserts that it's her responsibility to inform the people, because she is a reporter, as we know. This is what she's supposed to do, and Betty believes that Alice should not be using what happened between Polly and Jason as an excuse to write this way, and instead should be writing about the mystery surrounding the murder. She shouldn't just be treating it like it's, something that she, wants to be publicized and romanticize it. And Alice suggests that Betty write for the paper herself, since she's clearly so interested in reporting the story. And again, I love seeing how Betty is standing up to her mother. I love that she's not just letting her do what she wants. Like, she actually is telling her, look, you need to actually treat this like it's a legit thing. You can't just leave this unnoticed. You can't treat it like this is some movie, because it's not a movie. It's real life, and she needs to treat it as it happened and not try to, glorify it in any way, which is exactly what she's doing. And that happens a lot in the news. I thought that definitely was something that the show is actually paying a very good tribute, is this is the kind of stuff that happens in the news. People will always, tamper with stories to make them as interesting as possible. It's kind of like clickbait, where you'll click on something just because, oh, that sounds interesting. That's exactly what Betty is doing here, and I mean what Alice is doing here. I like that Betty is trying to, get her to make an more accurate representation of what really happened. So at Riverdale High, Archie watches through a window as Grundy plays a cello, and I will definitely say this was Archie's weakest episode yet. I really did not think Archie had too much to do here. He then goes to Weatherby's office where he tells Weatherby and Keller that he heard the gunshot on July 4th as well, and Keller asks what Archie was doing at the river that early in the morning, and Archie explains that he was working on songs, and Keller asks if Archie was alone. Archie says no, and he almost reveals that he was with Grundy. Like, he's about to reveal it, but instead says that he was with his dog, Vegas, which we know is obviously not true. So in the student lounge, Archie, Veronica, Betty, and Kevin are all sitting. Kevin's telling everyone they're under suspicion because of Sheriff Keller, and Kevin suggests they all hang out, but Veronica reveals that she can't because she has a date, and the group finds out it's Chuck Clayton and congratulates her on going on a date with him, and I did like the way that was done, definitely. But Jughead then meets Betty, and immediately any sort of theories about Jughead being dead are put to rest, which I'm very happy about. I think it was a dumb theory to begin with. I don't know why people were thinking Jughead was dead. Just because he was interacting with Archie doesn't mean the character's dead. I don't know why people were thinking that. I'm glad to see he's not, because if they do a twist like that, it makes absolutely no sense after this scene. But he meets with Betty in the defunct school newspaper room. She tries to convince him to reboot the school paper with her, saying that the people of Riverdale will want to hear what Jughead has been writing in his novel, and he agrees, and Betty has him write the first assignment, because, he knows how to actually report things as they happen, to interview Dilton Doily, who was at the river that night, which that definitely is one of the most interesting parts of the episode, is seeing Jughead go to Doily, but I like the way that Betty is still in control of all this. It shows that Betty still is the one who is the driving force of everything that's going on. I do definitely really like seeing that. So Archie arrives home, and Fred confronts him about his alibi at the river, saying that he believed Archie and Jughead were on a road trip on July 4th, and he tells Archie he should have come to him with that secret so Fred could accompany him to the authorities, because now he really knows what's going on, and Archie gets upset. Fred grounds him for 2 weeks, which I thought was really unnecessary. I don't know why he grounded him for that reason. I mean, I obviously understand that Fred's a bit upset, but just in general, I don't really know why Fred decided that he was going to ground him. It just seemed kind of dumb to me, at least in my opinion. But Veronica and Chuck are there on their date, sitting in the car in the Pop's parking lot. They take a selfie together. The pair of them remark about feeling both like outsiders at Riverdale High, and then they share a kiss. And everything seems like, okay, maybe they still get together. We'll get into that, though. The next day, we get to my favorite part of the episode. As you guys know, this is my favorite arc going on. And by my favorite, I mean my least favorite part. Grundy and Archie, this is just getting stupid, honestly. I'm not into this plot. She confronts Archie, asking why he came forward about the gunshot. She believes that even though Archie left her name out of it, any further investigation could lead to a reveal about the relationship, and decides to suspend their music lessons together, because, God forbid, something actually happened. And I understand, that Grundy doesn't give a shit about Archie. It's pretty clear to me she does not care about him. She cares about herself way more than she does about him, and I'm just not into this. I really am not. There's so much more interesting stuff going on. We don't need this plot, in the way. Luckily, it's not really the main focus of this episode, but in the hallway, Kevin and Betty ask Veronica about her date with Chuck. She says that while he was nice, his conversation skills were lacking. He just wasn't really a good, conversationalist, and Veronica's suddenly approached by Cheryl's minions who ask her about a sticky maple that Chuck gave her on their dates, and Veronica's very confused, and everyone's phones start to blow up with a picture of Veronica and Chuck with something photoshopped over Veronica's face, and Veronica realizes that she's basically being slut-shamed, and quickly decides that she needs to get revenge on Chuck, because Chuck is making it seem like, a lot of stuff happened to them on their date, like they had sex and things like that, when clearly they didn't. And I did think that this issue is a very pressing issue. It's something that does need to be addressed, because it goes on in high schools all the time. Guys will always try to make dates sound better than they actually are, or the girl will as well. Someone in that relationship will always try to make it seem like the date was a lot more eventful than it actually was, and especially when something was as mundane as Veronica and Chuck's date were. All they did was talk, and Chuck really was not into the conversation, and clearly he was just looking to smash. That's really all it was. And obviously, Veronica wanted more. Veronica doesn't just want that. Again, she doesn't want to be known as the slut. She wants to be known as a genuinely good girl. She wants to actually be smart. She wants someone who she can actually talk to. She doesn't want someone like Chuck, and I really do love the way the episode categorized it. I thought overall that was very well done. So Betty suggested Veronica tell Weatherby or let Betty write about it in the paper, but Veronica refuses and storms off, asking if Betty's going to come along and help her, and Betty reluctantly agrees. So this sets up the main plot of the episode, which is definitely interesting, but does kind of take away from a lot of other interesting stuff going on. So Veronica with Betty close behind barges through the boys' locker room. Archie's wearing only a towel. He sees them, asks why they're there, and Veronica tells him to stay out of their way. So they confront Chuck about the picture. Literally, as he's in a towel, he's laughing it off, pretending that, there's no possible way that it didn't happen. He suggests that Veronica's already regarded as promiscuous after the events with Archie, and Veronica tells Chuck off, but he tells her that trying to further confront him will only make things worse for her. So again, he feels he has his power over her, and he feels that, you know what happened, you can't deny it. But of course, we know what actually happened. We know that Veronica's not like that. She wouldn't just sleep with Chuck to sleep with Chuck. That's just not who Veronica is. And that's something the first two episodes have done very well, is they've really shown us, okay, this is who Veronica Lodge is. She's not this girl that everyone thinks she is. And I do like the way they showed that here. But Jughead then finds Dilton, who is leading a local Boy Scout troop. And this one we get one of the more interesting parts of the episode. Jughead asks him about the gunshot on July 4th, and Dilton doesn't really cooperate, saying that he already told Sheriff Keller that he didn't see anything weird, that, really nothing happened. And Cheryl whispers to Archie while they're in a class together. She thanks him for providing his alibi and helping validate her story of what happened to Jason, and as a reward, she offers to do anything for him except for sex. She doesn't want to do that, and Archie suggests that there is one thing that she could do. So he plays music in the student lounge, and we see Josie comes in, who Josie finally, after being kind of just like a background character who's just there to provide songs, actually has some sort of depth in this episode. And I actually really like the actress who played Josie. She was had the perfect amount of sass, but also I think the perfect amount of heart. She really did have those two things very well. You could see her dedication to her music, and I really did like what we saw with Josie here. She says that she's only doing this because Cheryl asked, and Josie invites Archie to sit in on the Pussycats rehearsal this week, and Archie mentions that even though he's grounded, he will try to be there. You can tell he's kind of drawing inspiration from them. We know that he wants to be a musician. This is the kind of stuff he wants to pursue, so I like the way they showed that here. But Veronica sits at home reading all the negative comments on her photo. She's growing very upset, and Hermione comes in, asks about her date with Chuck. Veronica explains that he isn't her type anymore, and Veronica receives a phone call from Betty and leaves the room to answer it. And she arrives at Riverdale High, makes her way to the newspaper room. Betty sits in there alongside a group of girls, and Betty reveals that all the girls were either harassed by players on the football team, and one of the girls, Ethel, reveals that after talking to Chuck in the library for 10 minutes, he started to spread sex rumors about her. So Chuck is someone who has done this a lot, and every high school has someone like that. I'm going to admit my high school has people like that. I'm not going to give names, obviously, because I'm not a douchebag. That's just not who I am. But there are people in my school who have definitely done that, where they said, we totally smashed, or she was so drunk, or something like that, when really nothing actually happened, and they're just trying to make it seem good. They're just trying to make it sound better than it really is to, I guess, just make themselves sound cooler, and as we see here, it really doesn't do a bit of good for someone to do that. So Cheryl walks in, interrupting Ethel's story. She starts to get a few of the girls for River Vixens practice, but Ethel continues on. She explains the guys keep their tracks of their conquests in a secret book. She denies that theory, saying that Jason, who used to be co-captain of the football team, never would have allowed a book like that to exist. He never would have done that. And Veronica confronts her, saying that either way she's going to get her story and the other girls' stories believed, because it obviously happened. They wouldn't lie about this. So at Pops, Jughead confronts one of the kids from Dilton Doyley's scout troop. While eating the kid's milkshake, the kid says that Dilton accidentally shot the gun on July 4th while teaching the kids how to shoot targets. So this opens up a new possibility that Dilton Doyley very well could have been someone who maybe shot Jason as an accident, but it definitely could be a possibility that definitely either they got the gun from Dilton, and that definitely I thought was very interesting to see. So Archie then sneaks out of his room to meet the Pussycats for practice, and at practice, Josie asks Archie why he exactly wants to observe their practices, and Archie suggests the band could play his songs, but Josie says that his white male privilege means he wouldn't write songs that fit her and the band's experience. That's just not who they are. Archie is a way different style of music than they have, and he agrees, and I love how, again, Josie completely dominates Archie in this scene. That was a lot of fun to watch, and Ethel then goes to see Betty in the newspaper room. Accompanying her is Trev, who is Valerie's brother and a former Riverdale football player, and he explains that after seeing Chuck's playbook, he quit the team, but that he still knows where the book is. And later that night, they do some snooping in the school for information. They're startled by Cheryl, who offers to help with their investigation, and Ethel finds the book in a supply closet. The group begin to look through it, and they discover that Polly's name is in the book under Jason's conquest, and gets upset when Cheryl refuses to believe it. Cheryl admits that maybe she didn't know everything about her brother, and Betty suggests the group get revenge for the book, and that she has a plan on how to do so. So basically we now know what's actually going on, that there is definitely this book about what's really happening. And obviously Betty doesn't wants to abandon Polly's bad reputation. She doesn't want Polly to have the bad reputation anymore. And I love the way they've been building Polly's character. We still don't know her. Betty said she was going to go try to see her, but she didn't in this episode. But I'm still interested in seeing where they're going to go with that. So back at the Pussycats practice, Archie helps the group with a struggling lyric on Archie's song. They perform the song, and Josie asks to see more of Archie's songs, and Bay then sits in her room applying lipstick. Alice then criticizes her for picking out that color, which used to be Polly's, and Betty ignores her mother, saying that the color makes her feel powerful, which is exactly, what Alice wants. She wants Bay to have some confidence, and Alice asks Bay to go with her to the mayor's event, but Betty says she's going over to Veronica's to study, and Alice wipes the lipstick off Betty's face, hands her a different one, telling her not to hang out with Veronica. Again, she feels that she's a bad influence, and again, I love that Betty's not listening to her. I love the way that Betty's rebelling. I love the way that she's not listening to her mother. Again, it says so much about her character, and I've been loving the way they've been doing that for these, first 3 episodes. So Betty then arrives at Pop's wearing a particularly revealing outfit, and she approaches Chuck, sits at a booth with him. She comes on him saying that she wants to feel more like a bad girl, and when this happened, I'm like, okay, I definitely know what's going to happen here. They agree to meet up the next night. Betty suggests Ethel's place because her parents are out of town, and she'll leave a key. So clearly you know that this is definitely part of some larger plan, and I did like seeing this more the sexual side of Betty that we don't really get to see, and I thought that was definitely well done. But Archie then sneaks back home, is quickly caught by Fred, and Fred confronts him about it, and Archie asks if he can go to the mayor's event to hear his song, but Fred says no, and Archie says that that's because Fred doesn't understand his music. And I really did love Archie's points here, because yeah, ever since Archie wanted to join this band, Fred hasn't exactly been supportive. I mean, it's kind of seemed like he wants nothing to do with it, and he doesn't understand how important of a thing this really is to Archie, because he does really want to participate in this. And I like the way that he, once again, told his father, look, you don't really know how, invested I am in this. This is something I really do want to do. So Chuck shows up at Ethel's, where he's greeted by Veronica. He explains that she and Betty agreed to share Chuck, and she leads him to the hot tub. Suddenly, Betty walks out in a black wig and lingerie, and both Chuck and Veronica are shocked. They were not at all expecting her to wear this, but Mayor McCoy introduces the Taste of Riverdale event. Fred says hi to Hermione, who's working the food table. They're quickly interrupted by Grundy, who Fred recognizes, and he introduces himself and asks if they can talk in private. So Mayor McCoy then approaches Cheryl's parents, who are instantly confrontational. Alice asks to get a quote from Penelope for her article, but Penelope slaps her, once again clearly not wanting to reveal anything about Jason's murder, and the crowd is shocked. Josie and the Pussycats take the stage to get everyone's attention. They perform Archie's song as Jughead and Archie watch from the rafters, and Jughead leaves saying he needs to confront Dilton. Now that he knows information about Dilton, he needs to do something about it. So down in the party, Fred asks Grundy if Archie really is that musically talented, and Grundy assures that he is, that he definitely is good at what he does, and that he at least deserves to try to pursue a career in it. And Fred asks why Grundy takes an interest in Archie, and she says that he's a special kid. And again, I'm just not feeling it. I'm not feeling anything with this storyline. And Fred especially, I mean, I understand why Fred obviously is trying to get information on Grundy. He knows something's going on between her and Archie, but I just am not feeling this at all, because everything else is just so much more interesting to me. But Allison confronts Hermione, asking if she knows the things that have been said about Veronica at school, and Hermione gets worried and calls Veronica, and she ignores the call. She watches Betty pour drinks. Betty slips a muscular relaxer into Chuck's drink in hopes that it will get him to tell the truth about the playbook, and Betty asks if Chuck wants them to slow down. He says no, clearly just wanting to do whatever he can to, have sex with her, and Jughead then confronts Dylan about the gunshot on July 4th. Dylan begins to justify his actions, but Jughead tells him to save it for the statement, and he'll give it to Sheriff Keller and makes him agree to meet in the school paper offices tomorrow. Again, Dylan is doing whatever he can to try to make himself look good, but again, it definitely makes me a little bit more suspicious of what Dylan's true actions really were. So Chuck wakes up in the bathtub with both of his hands handcuffed, and Veronica starts recording Chuck on her phone. Betty turns up the temperature of the hot tub, and I'm not gonna lie, this is quite awesome to watch. She tells him to tell the truth about what happened with Veronica. He does, but Betty decides to take it a step further. She puts her heel on Chuck's head, basically torturing him as much as they possibly can, pushing him further into the hot water until he apologizes, and Ethel then cracks open a nearby door and watches. Chuck apologizes, but Betty then grabs a bottle of maple syrup, begins to pour it on Chuck's head. She starts referring to him as Jason and talks as if she herself is Polly, and Veronica then stops her, and again, she doesn't want to have this bad reputation. So very interesting scene. I like the way that Chuck definitely admitted what he was doing, and I like the way they were able to get to really fully admit what actually happened. So the next day, Archie then finds Fred outside. Fred reveals that he's soundproofing the garage for Archie to practice his music, and he talks about his conversation with Grundy. So he really does see that his son does want to do this, and that he actually does want to fulfill in being a musician, and he actually is taking this seriously. So I do like the way that Fred wasn't a dick about it. He actually decided, okay, if you want to do this, I'll let you do it, and I like the way that was done. So Betty holds a stock of issue at the Blue and Gold, and Veronica comments her on the article. Both girls reveal that they weren't able to sleep the night before after everything that happened, and Veronica asks Betty about the wig, the comments she made where she sounded like Polly, and Betty says she doesn't fully remember it, but that either way she was doing it to teach Chuck a lesson. So once again, we don't really know what's going on there, but Betty, Veronica, and Hermione sit in Weatherby's office. Jughead's narration reveals that Hermione was able to negotiate a lesser punishment for the girls for what they did to Chuck, and we see in the school hallways, Chuck and his posse walk shamefully through the hallway. As a myriad of girls watch, Jughead reveals that the group was cut from the football team, an event that would have consequences in Riverdale High for weeks to come. And that one line very much interests me on what that really means. What kind of impact did this really have on Riverdale? And Betty and Veronica then thank Ethel for coming forward in the story. Cheryl remarks that Ethel received justice, and Jughead explains that going forward, Betty and Veronica's friendship had been forged by this experience. So they always were together. It seemed like this, was really confirming their friendship, and I like the way that we saw that. So outside Riverdale High, Betty and Cheryl throw out the burn book and lay it on fire, obviously because they don't want anyone to be able to obtain it, and Cheryl apologizes for the hurt that Jason did cause Polly, because clearly they did go through a rough time, and Archie walks in the music room, startling Grundy. He thanks her for what she said to her dad, and she says that it was genuine, and again, I don't believe a single thing this woman says at this point, but Dilton begs Jughead and Betty not to run a story about his involvement on July 4th, instead offering up a better story, and they agree, and Dilton reveals that he saw Grundy's car by the river that day, and Jughead's narration reveals that he's conflicted, saying he'd do anything to protect Archie, but isn't sure that he'll be able to now this information is getting out. Now that he's saying, what's going on, he might not be able to protect Archie and cover up the story much longer, and that is the way this episode ends. Really interesting off overall. Let's get into this episode and where we're going to go from here. So overall, guys, this was definitely a slower episode with not as much going on, but there still was some interesting stuff that I really did like. First of all, let's talk about our main story here with Chuck. I thought it was overall really well done. I did think that it was definitely an issue that, they came to light in a very good way. I like the way that the episode definitely, did shed some light on that story, because it happens a lot, and, it's something that I thought the episode did a pretty well done portrayal of, and I especially am interested in getting into, Betty and Polly's relationship, because once again we saw that Polly and Jason really did not have the great relationship, and Jason especially really did not have a great reputation, and we definitely get the sense his reputation was probably ruined by whatever ended up happening with Polly. We don't know if this was Jason or Polly's fault, but we now know that Jason did want to fake his death to get away from his parents, and that's something I'm definitely getting, interested in getting into, is what really caused, Jason and Polly's relationship to go on such a downfall. What really was the downfall of their relationship? That's something I'm definitely interested in getting into, is what really did happen there. But Jughead, this was definitely Jughead's most involved episode yet, and I was very happy to see that. I really do like Cole Sprouse as Jughead. I think he does a very good job. But I'm interested in getting into, what he's really going to be able to do now. Because, one, he is writing this book. He's trying to write as accurately as possible. But also, as we know, it's getting harder and harder for him to cover up what really happened between Archie and Grundy. And I think Fred, he's definitely getting suspicious. Like, Fred definitely, I think, has an idea of what's going on. Does he know what word for word would happen? No, definitely. He doesn't know exactly what happened, but I think he has an idea of what's really been going on with his son. Why has his son been so reclusive? Why has his son been so secretive? This is why he's not really telling me. He knows that something's going on with Grundy, who at this point, I don't believe a single thing she says, especially from the promo we see, that might not even be her real identity. And if that's where we're going, that definitely could be an interesting storyline. But I do like Jughead trying to do whatever he can to protect Archie. I think it is definitely an interesting storyline, the way the show is doing that. And I think it was interesting with Dilton in as well, that they're not going to talk about his involvement because it's just going to make him more suspicious. And Dilton seems innocent. Like, it genuinely seems like he didn't really mean to do anything. He just fired the gun off by mistake. And if anyone knew that, that definitely could possibly make him a target. You know, people can twist his words around really well. And I think that's something the show is really shedding some light on really well, is that, you know, when you have a story, someone can just, you know, twist some words around and turn to a completely different story. That's exactly what Alice is doing, which Betty is, you know, shameful of. She doesn't want her mom to do this. She wants her to tell as accurate of a story as possible. And I think they showed that very well here. I really did love the way that was done. I thought that was overall a really well done story. But everything else going on this episode, to me at least, was kind of filler. As much as I did like the Chuck story, and I did like seeing more of Josie and the Pussycats, they just didn't really do much to the plot. You know, Josie and the Pussycats were there to inspire Archie, I guess, to give him, to give us an idea this is really what Archie wants to do, that he actually does want to do more in his music career. And then everything going on with, you know, the Chuck story, again, was very well done, but really didn't need to be here. It just further showed Veronica's reputation, which I do love. Veronica, and, you know, Betty is probably my favorite character, but Veronica is definitely a close second, and I do think they've done a very good job with developing these two characters, but, you know, really didn't do much in terms of the overall plots. And I don't think Jason Blossom was much of a focus, which is fine. I get that the show is a high school show. In general, though, this definitely was a very well done episode. I still really did enjoy it, and even though it was a bit slower and not as interesting as the first two, I still was very interested in what was going on. I liked the stuff going on with Jughead. I liked stuff about the case. I even liked the main story that was going on. I didn't find it bad. I just thought that it was just a little bit slow and didn't necessarily need to be in this episode. But overall, guys, I still am really enjoying Riverdale. I thought this was another really strong episode. I am going to give Riverdale Season 1, Episode 3, Chapter 3, Body Double, a 3.5 out of 5 or a B. So far, guys, in this episode of Riverdale, let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Loved your thoughts in it. Where do you think the show's really going with Jason's case? What really happened there? So I will see you guys in my next video, which will be, I think, for a movie review, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.